The story opens on a cracked, wind-burnt horizon in the late 1800s, somewhere between the high deserts of New Mexico and the broken plains of Arizona Territory. The land is dry, restless, painted in red dust and silence. A hawk circles overhead as a woman trudges through the ghostly remains of a burned ranch. Her name is Ellen Carver, 32, widow of a man once known for his temper and his cattle. The ranch has been reduced to ash by raiders. Apache renegades, say the Army reports, though Ellen knows the land breeds desperation in every color. Her husband, Jed Carver, died 6 months before, gunned down in a border dispute with prospectors. She has been alone since, living off what little her land gives and what mercy the dry sky allows. One morning, she rides out with a mule and a rifle to salvage scrap iron from the ruins of her barn. The air is strange, too still, too hot. The mule jerks, nostrils flaring, and she feels it before she sees it. A figure crouched behind a tumble of stone, a shadow with a knife glinting dull in the sunlight. The man is Apache, his hair tangled, his skin burned darker than dust, his body gaunt but coiled with the lean muscle of a hunter. Blood trickles from his side. He's been wounded, maybe by soldiers, maybe by his own kind. He's breathing hard, cornered, animal-like. Ellen raises her rifle, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. For a moment, time slows. The two of them locked in the raw stare of people who have lost too much to trust anyone again. Then he lunges. The rifle fires once, kicking smoke, but the bullet grazes him. He slams into her, and they fall into the dust. She fights, clawing, kicking, but his strength pins her. His knife flashes near her throat, and his voice breaks in halting English, guttural and low. "Please, let me live. I'll bear your line." It's a strange, desperate thing to say. She freezes. The knife trembles in his grip. His eyes are not wild, not cruel. They're exhausted, half-mad with pain and hunger. In those eyes she sees not a killer, but something broken, something human. She realizes what he means. He offers himself as her servant, her protector, anything if she spares him. It's an ancient kind of bargain, the language of survival between enemies. Ellen could pull the trigger again. No one would blame her. But her hand falters. She sees the blood soaking his side, the shaking in his limbs. Her husband once shot a starving Comanchero just for trespassing. The man had begged too. She remembers that man's eyes and how the guilt never left her since. Slowly she lowers the rifle. "You'll die out here," she says. "And I've no use for company." He sheathes the knife with trembling fingers and collapses. When she steps closer, she smells the iron of blood and the dust of long roads. She doesn't even know why she does it, but she lifts his arm over her shoulder and drags him to her mule. The sun burns mercilessly as she takes him back to her shack. Half-standing walls, patched roof, a ghost of what once was home. That night, she cleans his wound with whiskey. He doesn't cry out, though his jaw clenches like stone. He tells her his name in a whisper, Taza, though later she will learn it's not his real name, it's the word for warrior among his people, a title stripped from him when he disobeyed his chief. He's an outcast Apache, hunted by both sides, the bluecoats who see him as a savage and the tribes who see him as a traitor for sparing white settlers once. He has killed, yes, but not for cruelty, for survival. As he sleeps, Ellen watches him. She thinks of how the world sees men like him, less than human beasts to be shot on sight. Yet here he lies on her floor, breathing shallow but alive, and she feels the faintest flicker of something she hasn't felt in years. Not pity, but a strange, hollow warmth. She remembers what he said, "I'll bear your line." The words twist in her chest, part threat, part vow, part something else entirely. Maybe he thought it meant he'd serve her. Maybe he thought it meant more. She doesn't know. When dawn comes, the desert turns gold. He wakes, eyes flickering open, wary. Ellen hands him a tin cup of water. "Drink slow," she says. "You're lucky I ain't turned you in." He stares at her, unsure if it's mercy or madness that kept her from pulling the trigger. Outside, the mule brays and a dust devil dances through the charred corral, ghosts of her old life swirling in the morning light. Over the next few days, they circle each other like wolves, testing distance. He helps mend her fence when he's strong enough, though every hammer strike seems to echo with the question neither asks. What now? She finds herself studying the marks on his arms, tattoos, scars, symbols she doesn't understand. At night, she hears him whisper prayers to spirits she can't name. The world outside is cruel enough that two enemies might find a kind of fragile truce within the same four walls. Still, she knows what the town would say if they saw him here. An Apache under her roof? They'd burn her out or worse. But out here in the silence of the plains, judgment feels far away. Only the stars watch. And in their cold, endless light, Ellen begins to feel the dangerous pull of something she doesn't yet dare name. Something like belonging. Something like forgiveness. By the end of this first section, the foundation is laid: 2 lost souls, 1 act of mercy, and the faint spark of a love that cannot exist. The widow who should hate him has spared him. The warrior who should kill her has sheathed his knife. The land between them, like the distance between their worlds, is vast and empty. But for the first time, neither one feels entirely alone. The days that follow are like walking a tightrope stretched across 2 worlds. Ellen Carver and the outcast Apache Taza live in a silence broken only by wind and work. He chops wood, repairs the corral, gathers mesquite for the stove. She mends his bandages, sets his meals apart from hers, and tries not to notice how his quiet presence fills the house in ways her husband's never did. Ellen was raised to fear men like him, taught that Apaches were ghosts of the desert, born for killing, incapable of gentleness. But each dawn, when she sees him kneeling by the well to wash his wound in silence, she begins to see the man beneath the myth. His movements are precise, respectful. He never looks at her too long. He never speaks unless spoken to, and yet something in the air between them hums like a live wire. Taza, for his part, doesn't understand her mercy. In his world, the strong take, the weak fall. But this woman, pale as moonlight, hands cracked from work, eyes that burn with quiet grief, had chosen not to kill him. He watches her move through her ruined ranch, rebuilding what little she can, and something shifts inside him. He doesn't have a word for it in English, but in Apache, it's close to Yaji Chi, a tenderness mixed with sorrow. Each night, he sits by the fire after chores and she reads from her husband's old Bible in a low voice. She doesn't expect him to understand, but he listens. When she reads the story of Ruth, "Whither thou goest, I will go," his eyes flicker with something raw and pained. Later, when she catches him tracing the page with a calloused finger, she realizes he knows more English than he lets on. One evening, a storm rolls over the plains. The wind screams through the broken rafters and the rain beats against the walls like fists. The roof leaks. They scramble together to save what they can, moving sacks of grain, patching holes, lighting the stove. A beam collapses and Ellen slips. Taza catches her by the arm, pulling her close. For a heartbeat, their faces are inches apart. The lamplight dances across their skin. She sees the scar on his cheek, the faded paint along his jaw, and the terrible gentleness in his eyes. Neither moves. Outside, lightning cracks the sky open. Then she pulls away, trembling. Not from fear, but from the forbidden truth that something in her wants to stay in that moment. She retreats to her room. He stays by the fire, staring into the flames as though trying to burn the image from his mind. When morning comes, the storm has passed. The desert smells of rain, a miracle scent that softens even the hardest earth. Taza steps outside to tend the mule, and Ellen watches him through the window. His hair, unbound, falls across his shoulders. The sun paints him in gold and amber. She thinks of her late husband, Jed, whose love was more duty than tenderness, and something inside her aches. That afternoon, soldiers ride through the valley, 6 of them wearing blue coats in suspicion. Ellen hides Taza in the root cellar beneath the floorboards. When the sergeant knocks, she opens the door with her rifle leaning casual against her hip. "You're a long way from town," she says, trying to sound calm. The sergeant spits dust. "Scouting for a fugitive Apache. Killed 2 traders near the Pecos. Some say he's bleeding to death." She shrugs. "Only dead thing I've seen lately is my mule's temper." They search the property but find nothing. When they leave, she bolts the door and pulls open the trapdoor. Taza climbs out, pale with fury and shame. "You lie for me," he says, voice hoarse. "I kept you alive," she answers. That's all, but they both know it's not all. In the tight, breathless dark of that hiding place, something fragile between them had solidified. Trust, or something like it. Over the next few weeks, their closeness grows. He teaches her words in Apache. Shiyaji, my little one. Nihutsikis, you think too much. D, this. She shows him how to mend a saddle and bake cornbread. It becomes a rhythm. A quiet domesticity born of exile and necessity. The world outside has no place for either of them. so they build a new one from scraps. But peace is never meant to last on the frontier. One day, Ellen rides into town for flour. A ranch hand spots her, sneers, and says he saw smoke on her ridge and tracks not made by boots. Gossip spreads faster than wildfire. By the time she returns, the look in Taza's eyes tells her he already knows. They will come, he says simply. For me, maybe for you. I won't let them, she whispers, voice breaking. He shakes his head. You saved me once. Do not lose your soul for it. That night, they sit by the fire for what feels like the last time. The desert outside glows under a copper moon. Ellen places her hand on his, rough against rough. A touch that means everything and nothing at once. I don't want to be alone anymore, she confesses. He looks at her, eyes full of both longing and sorrow. Alone is all the desert gives, he says. But when she leans forward, their lips meet, soft, trembling like two prayers colliding. The kiss is brief, desperate, forbidden. When they part, she sees tears she didn't know he could shed. By dawn, the fire has burned to ashes. Neither speaks. The line between mercy and love has blurred beyond recognition. The outline closes on a haunting image. Ellen standing at the doorway, watching Taza walk toward the hills, carrying his bow and a single glance over his shoulder. The wind lifts her hair and the land swallows him whole. She knows he'll return, or maybe she only hopes he will. Either way, the fire he's lit inside her heart will not go out. Autumn creeps over the desert like a slow sickness. The nights grow longer, the air brittle, the stars sharper. Taza returns to Ellen's ranch 2 weeks after their parting. He comes in silence, just as before, a shadow slipping through mesquite and moonlight. She hears the faint knock at her door and feels her heart stumble in her chest. He looks different. Leaner, harder, eyes ringed with exhaustion. He carries a single rabbit, skinned and cleaned, laid respectfully by the door. For food, he says. She stares at him, unsure whether to thank him or to weep. The loneliness had gnawed at her so badly she'd started talking to the mule. That night, she lets him stay. No words are needed. There's a fragile peace in their silence, like standing still in a storm's eye. But something in him has changed. He's restless, haunted. Sometimes, when he thinks she's asleep, she hears him murmuring in Apache, voice low and raw. Once, he wakes shouting. A word she later learns means blood. Days pass. He helps with the fence, the animals, the roof. They speak little. When she asks where he's been, his eyes drift toward the horizon. Back to the old land, he says. To burn my father's bones. She doesn't press further, though the weight of that sentence sits heavy between them. It's one evening, by the dying light, when he finally tells her. His people cast him out after he refused to take part in a raid against settlers, women and children included. He'd been raised on the stories of vengeance, but he'd seen too much killing. So he refused. His own brother led the punishment. They branded him Tiznanai, the ghost man, and left him to wander alone. Ellen listens, silent. She feels the ache of his words in her own chest. I know what it is, she says softly, to live with ghosts. She tells him of her husband, Jed Carver, how he'd been cruel in small, steady ways. How he drank. How he struck her once when she spoke against him. How the land had felt like a prison until his death freed her. The army called him a hero, she says. But I buried him with no tears. In that moment, they understand each other more deeply than words could tell. Both cast out, both shaped by violence and loss. Both bound to the land that refuses to forgive. Their nights together become quieter, gentler. Sometimes they sit on the porch watching the sky turn indigo. She teaches him how to write his name. He teaches her to listen. To the wind, to the coyote's cry, to the small music of survival. There are moments, fragile, fleeting, where it almost feels like love could survive out here beyond the reach of judgment. But ghosts never stay buried. One morning, Ellen rides into town for medicine. She stops by the post office and finds a letter from the army. Her husband's old debts are being settled. They're repossessing what's left of the ranch. She stands frozen, letter trembling in her hands as townsfolk whisper around her. A ranch hand spits near her boots. Heard you got an Apache living up there, he sneers. Ain't Christian what you're doing. By the time she returns home, the rumors have grown teeth. Someone's driven a stake into her gatepost, a crude warning carved into the wood. Indian whore. Taza sees it before she does. His face goes cold, expression unreadable. They know, he says. It is time for me to go. Ellen shakes her head. No, I won't let them take what little I have left. He turns to her, voice heavy with sorrow. They will not take it. They will burn it. That night, under a pale, brittle moon, they lie awake. She reaches for his hand. If the world sees us as ghosts, she whispers, then let's haunt it together. He smiles faintly, a sad, broken thing. Ghosts cannot stay, he says. They only pass through. The next morning, she wakes to find him gone. A single line drawn in the dust outside her door marks where he stood. She knows it's a message in his tongue, a farewell, a vow of return. But he doesn't come back for many days. The ranch feels hollow without him. Every sound, the creak of the boards, the caw of crows, feels like his absence speaking. She begins to dream of him, walking through red dust, eyes full of rain, whispering words she can't understand. Then one evening, the world splits open again. Smoke on the horizon. Not storm clouds, campfire smoke, soldiers' smoke. Ellen runs to the ridge and sees them, a patrol moving slow, sweeping the valley. And with them, bound to a horse, rides Taza. She feels the breath leave her lungs. They've caught him. Somehow the army found him again. She rides to the garrison that night, cloak pulled tight, fear twisting through her veins. The sergeant from before stands guard by the pens. When he sees her, he grins. Funny thing, he says. That Apache we told you about, turns out he's been hiding right under our noses. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you, Mrs. Carver? She stares him down, heartbreaking. No, she lies, her voice steady. He laughs and walks away. She slips around the back of the cages. Taza's there, chained, bruised, but alive. His eyes meet hers through the bars. For a moment, everything else disappears, the soldiers, the danger, the hatred. Only them. I told you ghosts cannot stay, he whispers. Tears burn her eyes. Then I'll follow you, she says. He shakes his head, slow, final. No, you will live. When she tries to reach for him, a soldier shouts. She flees into the dark, her heart a drumbeat of grief. By dawn, she rides back to the ranch alone. The land feels emptier than ever. She stands on the porch, staring out at the endless horizon. The wind rises, carrying dust and whispers and memories. She knows she will see him again, but not in life. The outline closes on this image. Ellen alone, the last ember of their brief love fading in her hands. Behind her, the walls of the ranch groan in the wind, like the echo of a man's voice saying goodbye. The moon rises red over the desert, swollen, heavy, a bad omen whispered in both English and Apache tongues. The night air feels thick, alive with the hum of cicadas and the faint crackle of faraway fires. Ellen Carver cannot sleep. She stands on her porch, gripping the rail, staring toward the distant army post where Taza is held. The sky glows faintly orange in that direction. The flicker of torchlight, the restless breath of soldiers. It's been 3 days since she saw him in chains. 3 days of silence, guilt, and sleepless nights. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees his face behind those bars. The calm acceptance, the quiet heartbreak. The world says he's a murderer, a savage, a ghost that deserves no peace. But to her, he's the only living soul left in a world of graves. By morning, she's made her choice. She saddles her mule before dawn, dresses in her late husband's clothes, boots, hat, long duster, and hides a pistol in the folds of her coat. The army letter repossessing her land sits on the table unsigned. Take the house, she mutters, voice hoarse. It was never home without him. She rides hard through the scrubland, the sun a red wound rising behind her. When she reaches the garrison at dusk, she hides in the dry wash below the outer fence and waits for darkness. She's done things she never thought herself capable of. But mercy, once given, is a fire that never dies. She will not let him hang like a thief. That night, the moon climbs high and full and red as rust. The soldiers drink and laugh around the campfire. Ellen moves like a shadow between the tents, the pistol heavy in her trembling hand. Her heart hammers in her ears. She finds him near the corral, bound to a post, his face turned to the sky. Taza, she whispers. He opens his eyes, disbelief flashing across them. You should not be here. They'll kill you by dawn, she says. I can't let them. He shakes his head. If I run, they will hunt you too. I don't care, she breathes. I'd rather die with you than live half a life without. For a long moment, he just stares at her. This woman who has lost everything yet still dares to love. Then he nods once solemnly. Then we run, she cuts his bonds. He stumbles, weak from days without food. She steadies him, their faces inches apart. For a heartbeat, time seems to fold in on itself. Two outcasts bound by something deeper than blood or law. Then a shout splits the night. "Hey, stop!" Gunfire erupts. The desert becomes a storm of bullets and shouting. They flee through the dark, dodging between cactus and rock, the red moon lighting their path like an unholy lantern. Ellen fires once, twice, her ears ringing. Taza pulls her down behind a ridge, returning fire with a stolen rifle. The soldiers' torches blaze behind them, flickering like angry spirits. They reach the dry riverbed, miles of sand and stone. The shots fade. Only the wind remains. Ellen collapses, chest heaving. "You're bleeding," she whispers, seeing the red seeping through his shirt. He glances down, unconcerned. It is nothing, but it is not nothing. The wound is deep, a bullet lodged near his ribs. She tears her sleeve, pressing it against the wound, but the blood keeps coming. "Don't you dare," she whispers. "Don't you leave me." He smiles faintly, breath hitching. "You should not have come." "You said ghosts can't stay," she says through tears. "Then I'll follow you into the dark." He lifts his hand, trembling, calloused, and brushes her cheek. "You are braver than the sun," he murmurs. "If the Great Spirit has mercy, I will find you again." The wind rises, swirling dust around them. In the distance, wolves howl. The red moon casts its terrible light over everything, painting the desert like a wound that will never heal. She refuses to let go. They find shelter in an old adobe ruin near the canyon rim. Inside, the air smells of clay and smoke. She lights a small fire, cradling his head in her lap. He drifts in and out of consciousness, muttering words in Apache. Prayers, memories, maybe her name. She holds him close, whispering back what little she knows. "Shiyaji. Di Nizhoni. My little one, this is beautiful." At some point, he opens his eyes again. "The moon," he says softly, staring at the crimson glow spilling through the cracks. "When it is red, it means the spirits walk close." "Then let them take me too," she whispers. He shakes his head weakly. "No, you must live. Tell them. We were not beasts." Tears fall on his face. She bends to kiss him. One final trembling kiss that tastes of salt and dust and fire. When she pulls back, his eyes are closed, his hand slipping from hers like sand through an open palm. The fire dies to embers. The wind moves through the ruins like a hymn. By dawn, she buries him herself. She marks the grave with stones, each one chosen by hand, each one a promise. When the sun rises, the blood moon fades into pale gold, and the desert looks almost peaceful. She kneels there for a long time, whispering his name into the wind until the sound of it no longer feels like grief, but memory. When she finally rides back toward her ranch, the soldiers find only footprints and an empty grave. The desert has claimed its ghost again. The outline closes on this image. Ellen riding into the sunrise, her face streaked with dust and tears. The wind carrying a single word behind her, Taza. The horizon burns red, endless, merciless, and alive. The promise made beneath the blood moon will follow her forever, like a scar carved into the soul of the land itself. Winter sweeps across the desert like an old ghost. The sky turns white with dust, the mesquite brittle and gray. The land that once sang with the cries of coyotes now lies silent, save for the wind whispering through the canyons, carrying secrets it refuses to bury. Ellen Carver lives on the edge of that silence. Weeks have passed since the night of her escape, since she buried Taza beneath the blood moon. Her face has grown hollow, her eyes darker, but she still rises before dawn, feeds the mule, stokes the fire, and walks the perimeter of her dying ranch. The world believes she's gone mad. The few who pass her gate whisper that the widow speaks to ghosts. They don't know they're right. Each night, when the wind shifts, she hears him, or thinks she does, calling her name across the plains, the voice low and steady, as if carried by the dust itself. Sometimes she answers aloud. "I'm still here," she whispers into the dark. "I kept my word, but the world does not forgive." The soldiers return in spring, searching again for the Apache sympathizer. They find only Ellen, standing on her porch with a rifle and a calm that chills even the bravest of them. The sergeant demands to know where the fugitive is buried. She says nothing. When they threaten to burn her out, she simply looks at the sun and says, "You can take my land. The desert doesn't belong to you." They leave uneasy, Some say they saw smoke rise from the ridge that night, thin and gray like incense to an old god. Others swear they saw a lone figure in the moonlight standing beside her, tall, dark, silent, his shadow mingling with hers. Ellen doesn't sleep much anymore. She writes his name in the dust each morning, then wipes it away before noon. She tends the garden he helped her plant, though nothing much grows now but sage and wild grass. The wind smells like rain that never comes. Sometimes she dreams she's back in that adobe ruin, his head on her lap, the fire still burning. In those dreams, he's alive. The desert hums with life. When she wakes, the silence crushes her chest. Years pass. Her hair turns the color of ash. The town forgets her name, calling her only the widow on the ridge. Children grow up hearing stories of the woman who loved a ghost, who spoke to the wind, who planted stones instead of flowers. Cowboys passing by her land tip their hats out of superstition. The desert, they say, is haunted, but Ellen doesn't mind the loneliness. She's made peace with it. Her love for Taza has become something larger than grief, something sacred. She has no photograph, no keepsake, nothing but memory, and yet that memory keeps her alive when everything else fades. One night in her final year, the wind rises fierce and strange. The air smells like rain and smoke again, the same as the night he died. She steps outside, her shawl wrapped tight, and looks toward the hills. The horizon glows faintly red. The moon, full and low, bleeds across the sky. She feels him before she sees him. That presence, soft and familiar, standing by the corral. The outline of a man. His hair loose, his stance proud and still. Her heart beats once, twice. She doesn't move, doesn't breathe. Taza, she whispers. The figure tilts its head just slightly like he always did when listening. The wind rises, swirling dust between them. For a moment she swears she sees his face. Not the worn, hunted warrior, but the man she loved beneath all the scars. I kept my promise, she says. I lived. The wind answers in his voice, and a whisper more felt than heard. And I waited. Tears blur her vision, and she smiles, trembling. Then come take me home. A gust sweeps across the plains, cold and fierce. The lamplight flickers out. When it steadies again, she's gone. The shawl drifting from her shoulders, the dust spinning where she stood. In the morning, a ranch hand finds the door open and the fire still burning. No body, no footprints, only a scattering of ashes near the porch and a single white feather caught in the fence wire. He looks toward the hills and swears he sees two riders far in the distance, one pale as dawn, one dark as dusk, disappearing into the red horizon. Years later, travelers passing through the valley tell a story. On nights when the moon turns red, a woman's voice can be heard singing on the wind, soft and lonely, and beside her rides a shadow no bullet can touch. They say it's the widow and the outcast Apache, bound forever to the land that could never hold their love. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, the desert smells faintly of smoke and wild sage, like mercy, like loss, like the memory of a fire that never quite went out.